All right, let's dive right into today's explainer, where we're unpacking a truly fascinating grimdark fable. We're exploring the evolving, mysterious ledger of a magical forest. It's a world governed by strange arithmetics, ancient forest guardians, and these overwhelming absolute zero forces. But at its core, it's really a story about what happens when the neat, organized data of a map gets totally disrupted by the very thing it's trying to track. We're going to break down the timeline, the characters, and the shifting realities of the living archive. So let's jump right in. To really understand the shifting reality of this living archive, we have to ask ourselves, how can a simple anomaly become an active participant in history? Usually an error in a ledger or a map is just that, a glitch, something to be erased, right? But what if that error, that leftover anomaly, just flat out refuses to be still? What if it actually starts moving with intention? The story we're exploring follows this mysterious entity known as the Shadow. It's a so-called soft error that simply refuses to be ignored, and as we'll see, its journey is completely rewriting the rules of this universe. And this dynamic brilliantly illustrates the Fichtean dialectic at play here. For those of us who love a bit of philosophical structure, it's a classic clash. First, we have the Theses, Alara. She represents the rigid order of detached observation. She's secluded in her sterile, data-driven workshop, completely reliant on metaphysical maps and instruments. Then we have the antithesis, the Shadow. This entity represents physical, chaotic mobility. It actually has a tactile presence and carries this faint dual flame tension. It is a raw, walking anomaly that directly clashes with Alara's need for stillness and control. Okay, let's look at how this actually plays out chronologically. Picture this. Ilara, representing that pure, detached observation, is sitting at her central bench. She's got this new tool, a dark fire detector active, and she's working in total synchronization with her Clockwork Owl's memory coils. Together, they're parsing all the accumulated night readings. But as they project these faint movement overlays onto their maps, they realize something huge. These paths don't belong to Big Ben or any known surface agent. By cross-referencing the tactile archives, Alara finds a very clear, unprecedented pattern emerging right out of the data. This anomaly isn't just random noise. It actually has a route. And the timeline of this anomaly is absolutely fascinating. The Shadow wasn't just aimlessly wandering the woods. It was deliberately walking the lighter conjugation's history in reverse. Over a 2-day traverse, it hit highly specific coordinates. It started from the forgotten altar of the Wind Spirit, moved to the Mechanical Garden, then the Violet Springs, the edge of the concealment field, and finally approached the workshop itself. Every single one of these sites perfectly matched a coordinate that a figure known as Sir Brain had once mapped or inhabited. So, back in the workshop, Alara confirms these residual traces. She realizes the Shadow has been standing in places that still carry a faint dual flame tension. It is literally collecting data that the denser, more dominant will of the forest had entirely overlooked. She categorizes the Shadow as a soft error. And in this world, a soft error is a residual yield or variable that chooses mobility over stillness. It's essentially forming a parallel ledger, written not in ink or code, but in physical movement, effectively refusing majority control. Now, while Alara is busy cataloging all this in her detached little workshop, the physical reality of the forest is literally shifting. As the Shadow reaches the deeper forest margin, its skeletal presence, which is tuned to the specific hiding frequencies of the Honest Pulse, triggers this incredible sequential reaction from the environment. First, as it moves through the concealment field, the Dualgron trees literally shift their leaves in perfect coordination to acknowledge it. Then, the Violet Springs brighten by a measurable degree. It's like the living architecture of the forest itself had been waiting for this exact, unpredictable variable to show up. This environmental reaction sets the stage for a major event. The forest had been waiting, and so its oldest continuous witness finally manifests, the Forest Guardian. It appears right at the edge of the synchronized perimeter that Sir Brain had originally inscribed. And what I find so brilliant about this moment in the source text is that the Guardian doesn't show up as a looming threat, nor does it roll out the red carpet. It simply occupies the threshold space it has eternally held. It is the ultimate neutral sentinel. What's absolutely crucial here is that their interaction completely transcends spoken speech. The Shadow stops at a respectful distance, its yellow eyes glowing steadily, and just inclines its skeletal head. The Guardian answers with what's described as a familiar pressure that carried meaning without ordinary language. They don't need words. It operates entirely on a profound metaphysical recognition. It is a single exchange of pure presence between the ancient sentinel and the walking anomaly that has come to change everything. During this dark, silent negotiation, the Guardian reveals something massive about the Forest's future. Historically, the Mechanical Garden, the Pure Land remnants, and the library's original artificial corridor were completely separate experiments. They were totally isolated. But The Guardian conveys that these three zones are no longer separate at all. They are rapidly converging, blending together in roughly equal measure to form a singular, unified future configuration for the forest. Right, so jumping back to our Fichtean dialectic for a second, this is where we hit the synthesis. We had Alara's stillness, the shadow's mobility, and now they clash to reveal this new reality. The Guardian explains that recent events, specifically 4 inscriptions and 3 dark fire coils, haven't just accelerated the forest's growth. They have fundamentally altered its long arithmetic. This synthesis creates a future convergence that is entirely unpredicted by the dominant denser will, and completely unpredicted by the forces of absolute zero. It's a brand new trajectory. Now, you might be wondering, so what? Why does the forest actually need a walking mistake? Well, the Guardian frames the destined path perfectly here. Without the continued presence of this soft error, the forest's accelerated growth would just succumb to a rigid, stifling tempo. It would be entirely taken over by majority control. The soft error is required because it creates zones that flat out refuse assimilation. It ensures that the concept of independent refusal isn't just some abstract idea, but something that can literally walk on its own 2 legs. The shadow is basically the forest's immune system against total conformity. So, as the shadow stands there listening, literally filing away every single metaphysical pressure change as pure data, a massive question just hangs in the air. We know the forest needs this refusal to survive its new arithmetic, but the ultimate fate of this converging reality depends on what the shadow does next. Will this walking anomaly stay in motion, endlessly patrolling and disrupting the rigid tempo? Or will it permanently anchor itself, taking root and becoming a structural, fixed part of the forest's new architecture? Meanwhile, let's contrast this by checking back in with Alara. While this reality-altering synthesis is going down in the deep woods, she is still completely detached in a workshop. She is totally unaware of the profound conversation taking place. All she experiences is a distant shift through her detector and her ledger watch. Her metaphysical map just updates with a new coordinate cluster centered on the Guardian's clearing. She captures the data point, sure, but she completely misses the soul of the negotiation. She just has her owl record the pressure change, and as a cartographer, she simply adds another open page to the ledger, just trying to keep every soft error legible against the creeping inevitability of absolute zero. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As the forest future enters this active, profound negotiation, how long can a fragile walking anomaly actually survive? It really makes you wonder who truly writes history, the cartographer sitting in a sterile room, or the mistake out walking in the woods.